Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Thank you, Adam. He gave me a new idea about how to pronounce my last name. So anytime you have to say it, you start with Aujla. Stay away from that. Okay. All right. So, and thank you because he is not here, but that was, oh, you are. For an amazing keynote opening. That was fantastic. A round of applause for him. So how many years do you think it takes to change an organization's culture? And as Andrew said, just so that we're clear, culture is what you observe. So you change the behaviors and then you see and feel that this is a different workplace. So we have a first bid, 5. At least 5. 15. Oh, the pessimism. What happened to the whisper of the heart? 6 months. We should talk. Is that a whisper of the heart, or is that, have you seen this happen? Okay, that is fantastic. I have seen that happen too, not in 6 months, but in about less than 2 years. So I listened to my whisper of my heart to become an entrepreneur 2.5 years ago. But before I did that, my last job was as a director for corporate learning, organizational development, and change at St. Joseph's Hospital in Toronto. And the mandate I was given by the president was to create a learning culture. This is an organization, 90-year-old. They had never had an internal dedicated department which was going to create or support internal learning. We did that for physicians, but not so much for the corporate group. And that was the mandate. I'm happy to report that we made amazing strides to shift not just the behaviors, but practices, structures put in place within 1.5 years, creating St. Joseph's as one of the strongest learning cultures in the GTA hospitals now. And the credit goes to this amazing group of people. And the one, this is, by the way, we called ourselves the Corporate Learning Posse. So the guy at the back who wasn't there, who is on a poster, his name is Jeff, who is currently the director of the hospital and 2 other hospitals in Toronto. This man is the most popular, most liked, admired clinician at the hospital. So until last year, he was the president of the Respiratory Therapists of Canada. Does he specialize in change? No. Does he specialize in learning, organizational development? No. But he was the key to changing the culture and creating a learning culture at the hospital. So my biggest win and effort was getting him on board. And of course, convincing my leadership that we should be hiring him for this position without a match in qualifications. But he was the person that mobilized change at every single level. So clinicians like to listen to clinicians, just like engineers like to listen to engineers. So if you can get people who they can relate to as compared to an outsider coming in, especially a new person to the organization with no history, there's a huge gap. So how do you create that change? Creating this team was all the effort that I put in. But creating the change was the effort that they put in through their networks. And that's what was the game changer. 1.5 years, I have worked at many other hospitals and organizations. We have not been successful in doing that. And I learned this from this man. Anyone recognizes him? He's an American. We have a few Americans here. His name is Bill Bratton. He, in 1994, was the chief for the New York Police Department. And he was tasked, at that time New York was considered one of the least safe, horrible crime rate, extreme dissatisfaction in the culture, 35,000 police officers, only $2 billion budget, no change in budget. And his task was to change the culture around, not just of the police department, but the municipality. And he did that. And he was recognized for it on Times Magazine within 2 years. And he didn't stop there. After 2 years, even though there was no change in budget, there was a significant increase in the satisfaction of the police officers. The performance went up. Crime rate went down by 35 to 50%. We're talking about change that is momentous beyond one person's ability. And how did he accomplish something so huge that lasted even after he left New York Police Department? And he continued to create the same success for Boston and then now LA. He said, take your inspiration from bowling. What do you do when you go bowling? Sorry? Oh, okay. You need a team who can actually hit. But what are you aiming for? The strike. You're aiming for the kingpin. If you get the kingpin, you get them all. That is the point of tipping point leadership. Right now, is there anybody in this room who works for an organization that is only working on one change initiative? Okay, so you and every leader in the organization is overworked and exhausted. We want to create change fast, and we want to create change at a very broad scale. How many of you are also working for organizations that are in a network setting? So you either have collaborations with other organizations that extend beyond, yes. So what do you do when you don't have hierarchical power to actually dictate them to do things differently? You need the kingpin. If you can hit the kingpin, you get all the set of pins in the bowling alley. So if I were to ask you, think about one change initiative you're working on right now. Who are the people in your organization that if they were the ones advocating for your change, people will come on board? Can you think of at least 2 to 5? Or more? So what about these people gives them power? Yes? People respect their opinion. The greatest source of power is referent power. If I admire you for who you are and how you work or your credibility, I am willing to follow your lead or to listen to what you have to say. Thank you. What else? Trust, which is very closely related to referent power. So they have either come through for me in the past, they have demonstrated they have been successful with other change initiatives, so I trust these people more. What else? Relationships. These people are either connected with other key players or they're connected with other players that are giving them information. That is vital. Or they bridge gap between departments that I really need support with in order to mobilize my change. Generosity. They come through, they give. So anytime I need something, I know I can depend on you. Yes? Yes, so the loud naysayers, it's like, hey, you know what? We've tried this before. What makes you think this is going to work this time? Anyone working in a unionized environment? Okay, just checking. Yes?
Something else they may have is, referring back to Vikash's talk, they may have that sense of dissatisfaction with the way things are, and they see that and they're then more willing to help you and use their official power on behalf of this because they have that too, and they'll use it in a way that helps you.
Fantastic. If you have somebody who has a legitimate title, a formal power, where we're bound to listen to this person, whatever strategy they're proposing, and they feel the same dissatisfaction that you are planning or proposing to address, then you've got a win, somebody who's going to be an early adopter.
So take that one step further, they also have passion about making it happen.
So passion to take that first step, as a lot of people talked about bridging that chasm that Vikas was talking about. You hear the whisper, and then you're willing to take that first step, you're passionate enough to take that risk, or you have authority to take that risk. Or you work in an environment where you have the ability to safely take the risk and still be okay and pivot accordingly. Any other people that come to mind who are the movers and shakers in your organization? Only if they came on board. Yes?
I'm thinking too of the people who are part of the unofficial hierarchy, the ones that everybody goes to in the network, who may not think may be invisible in the org chart.
Right.
So in the map of who you guys have, they're the ones who can stuff done.
Absolutely. Maybe these are the experts. So even though they don't have no title, formal title, we go to these people to seek information. Or they're so well informed that always they know what's the next big thing coming, so we seek their advice and counsel. Absolutely. Sir, at the back, you had an idea?
Well, I just think that these people tend to be good at prioritizing their time and energy, and they say no to a lot of yes, so they can say yes to a few things that they care about. So it's sometimes hard to find them and get access to them, but
For sure. You want to get something done, ask a busy person. You want something done ASAP, ask a very, very busy person. So we're looking at doers, people who are action-oriented. Is this approach of using influencers something really new? Not really. I mean, we have heard about it. It's a second step in John Cotter's model of a guiding coalition. Jason's book, which I've read especially again because I was coming to the conference. I've read it before too, Jason, just so you know. It is about creating the change agent network and making sure you're working with people who have influence. But this is same but different. It's taking it a step further where you are being very strategic in identifying who these key influencers are. So how you identify them is actually a twofold approach. You can hire Vikas's company. He did not pay me for this. But because I was looking for the link across speakers, I was telling him I was blown away by the work he and his company does. You can actually get somebody who, by the way, I'm running ahead of the slide, but let me backtrack. Sorry. The 4 steps we will do or walk through that you can take away and apply at your organizations are how you use influencers. Use is not the right word. How you leverage your influencers to actually create and scale change. And one of the steps that people normally forget is the recruitment piece, so I will want to address that too. You identify them, you invite them to be part of the leadership team or lead the change, then you make sure you get their commitment. And then your job really is around governance. So that's what I'm going to walk you through. And the approach that I have used with St. Joseph's Toronto, and I use now as an external consultant, and I'm hopeful that it will actually add value for you to take it back to your organizations as well. So this is what I was talking about. In identifying influencers, you can actually do a formal social network analysis where an organization can help you identify in a very rigorous, methodical way, a systematic way, to find who the influencers are. Because research has shown us title is not where the power ends. Usually power and talent is everywhere across our organizations and sometimes much farther down the lanes of hierarchy as compared to how we're used to. But if you don't have the resources, what do? You take a wild guess, just like you did in thinking about how much time did it take you to think of who the movers and shakers are. And I know this is not a foolproof method, and especially as a new person, you want to ask those that have been there long enough. So one of the best questions to ask anytime you join a new organization is, who should I be talking to? Who are the people that hold influence in this department, in this organization? Who are the people that bridge the gap between our department and other stakeholders that I must work with? So when you have that answer, you're looking at finding people that have so much power and influence coming from multiple sources. And you identified those sources. Legitimate power, somebody with title. We listen to those people. Somebody who is an expert. If I'm trying to, so I have no background or knowledge in technology, but I do support technology changes. I depend on the experts in technology. So finding out who is the expert or experts in the area that you're trying to scale the change in. Who has the information, not just information that is relevant today, but maybe relevant tomorrow. These are the eager seekers, people who are always engaging in continuous learning. Reward, the generosity I think Andrew mentioned. These people are generous in giving you opportunities, knowledge, information, things that you want. So other people are attracted to these folks because they can actually control or make sure that they are making it worth your while by doing something for them. And because I do a lot of work in unionized environments as well, coercion is a strong source of power. If you don't help me out this time, I can block some resources, opportunities for you. And that is also normal. And one of our tendencies, unfortunately, we do not want naysayers. We don't want the key core group to be people who are negative. But if they have influence, you absolutely want to invite them in. Because if you miss a source of power, the group that's going to lead is going to be not as strong if you actually invited everybody, even those that have negative influence in your opinion. And the last two, which are so relevant, and actually the very first example was about respect. That's referent power. And nobody can explain why we respect somebody. It could be similarity, familiarity, or appreciation, or just some intangible, tacit way people treat you that make you want to follow them. But also people who purposefully develop networks. And the biggest thing about network is not how many people you're connected to, but how many diverse people you're connected to. So you're here at this conference, and I'm so grateful for the exercises Adam got us to do, because I actually got to know my table much, much better. And if we can carry that theme through the rest of the day, to not just get more cards, but actually get cards of people and then follow up with people who are significantly different or in fields or industries that are different from us, gives me power. Because when that ball of yarn is thrown, I will be able to help. And if I can help you today, I am bridging that piece for you, and you can do it for somebody else or for me in the future. So this is the type of people you're looking for. And once you get these people, what are you doing with them? You are getting them to actually come to the table. And this is where my facilitation piece comes in. A lot of people feel once you've identified somebody, you can send a communication out. Or you can send a message to the senior leader in that department telling them, can you please make sure that Laura attends or becomes part of this working committee or group? That's not invitation. How do you invite your friends? How do you ask someone for a favor?
Well, you do yourself, you have a warm connection.
Yes. And if we're not friends, you don't even know who I am, what would you do differently?
You do it to yourself.
Yes.
I'm here for you.
The personal investment that you're going to make in inviting somebody up front. So the mnemonic that is popular in circles that do open learning and open dialogue is value. Can I add value to my invitation? Which means it's a verb. I actively have to do something beyond just sending a message or an invite. I actively had to make an introduction to you, as you said, in person. And once I've done that, I am making sure that I make it worth your while. Can I articulate what is in it for you and why you should join this initiative? But also setting a boundary. It's not for everybody. What is the expectation? If you're not clear, people are going to lose interest very fast. And everybody's overwhelmed to begin with, they're not going to come to the table. So you have to tell them the scope of what you're asking. You're demonstrating leadership, which means you have to practice humility. Asking someone to do something requires humility. If it's someone you have a very horrible history with, or you know has had a very bad reputation in the organization, and you have actually butt heads, how do you invite that person authentically? Right. Okay, Thank you. So if I understand the question correctly, one of the sources of power people we're looking for are people who have coercive power. So how can we invite those people to the table? Is that correct?
No, it's more just one of the methods by which you this is a couple of slides.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. One of them.
Right.
The next one, yeah. So coercion, it seems, it just seems sort of antithetical to say you don't do this.
Right.
It seems like a fear that
Oh, absolutely. So great question. This is a source that gives people power. So I'm saying when we're looking for who needs to come to the table, you want to find and include those people that have the ability to withhold rewards or to punish. And that usually comes with the most common way is unionized relationships. Because you have to have the solidarity, you work with the union, and if you're doing something different, that there is an opportunity that the union may actually make you the other, the outsider. So this is how you identify somebody who may or may not actually be ethical or humble, but has power within the organization.
So you're not saying that it's about using coercion.
No. Thank you for that question. Sorry if that came out incorrectly. Please do not use coercion. That is not. Next thing you know, this would be a lot of trouble. Thank you for that clarification. This is how you identify who the power holders are. So there are many, many ways people get power, positive and negative. Coercion just happens to be one of them. Did you have a question or comment? Okay. Oh, sorry. And then you have to make it time bound. So there needs to be some urgency. If it's a future goal, we are horrible. How many people invest in their future financially and non-financially? This is a very brilliant room. You should all probably be part of this influencer-led change. But in general, when you ask people for a very far off goal, it's hard for them to make sense of it, and therefore they don't commit, especially not in action. And the last part is embody. Don't invite somebody to the table and then your physical expression shows dejection or lack of empathy or invitation. When you invite somebody authentically, that's what this value piece is, then you're building internalization of this commitment of this goal. And I'm asking you to let them lead. So I'll give you an example. Right now, when you're inviting people, they may be interested. You're moving them from interest to being committed to your goal. So Daryl Connor, who, like John Cotter, is one of the fathers in change, he says you're moving people through this ladder from getting contact, the first time I hear what you want to do differently, to making value, internalizing that this is the best thing for me and the organization. So the difference is, my favorite example, I have a cousin who loves working out. Loves is an understatement. So he's obsessive about working out. If the gym, he lives in Dallas, if the gym is closed in his municipality, he will go to another one because they never close, even on stat holidays. So I always say to him, I really wish I could work out. I really like it, but I can only go once a week. And he's like, yeah, because you're interested. You will go work out if there is time, if you have energy, if the weather is nice, if you have nothing else to do, if nobody else invited you to do something. You're not committed. That is the journey you're bridging from contact to getting people to commit and internalize. And only when you've done that are they able to lead today. Sorry. And by them leading means you take a governance role. How many of you support boards or serve on boards? Okay. So typically, on the board, your job is not to get involved in operations. You don't tell the CEO how to run the organization. Your job is to make sure there is structure in place and there are checks and balances to make sure the organization is going on the right path. That's what governance is. And that is one of the breaking points between leaders who invite these guiding coalitions, but they want them to guide and not lead. The key critical difference between this approach and others is they literally are leaders. You have to step back in the background. Bill Bratton was not the face of the change. even though Times Magazine made him so after. My team was the face of the change, and in fact, more than them, it was their key influencers. So people didn't think this was a corporate initiative. And that only happens if you truly have taken a governance role. So that's a 4-step process from identifying who these people are that have power, then making sure that you invite them, that demonstrates value, and build their commitment and let them lead. And why this works, if I had to summarize it, it's because change, especially behavior change, it's a local trust-building moments. How many people change their behavior because the organization told them to? Or the government told them to? We change our behavior because either we have the dissatisfaction we can't live with anymore, or because someone that has influence over us in our behavior has shown us a different way. And you build those trusting moments over time through contact. If everybody in change says communication is the key, authentic communication can't happen from me to you because we don't have a relationship. But authentic communication can happen between you and your best friend at work, or you and the influencer at work, because you share something in common. The narrative they use creates shared understanding, which is the critical point without which you can't make sense of the change, there will be no buy-in, and absolutely no behavior change. So behavior change is always local. No communication strategy from the corporation is going to be able to impact it. And we're talking about politics and elections. Obama's strategy, for both his campaigns, was considered grassroots success because the key part about his strategy was inviting people to host events for their neighbors and friends to just have conversations about what Obama's election could do for the country. I am more willing to talk to my partner or my uncle as compared to any political leader who comes up to me and says he or she is the right person to run the country. That is the trust. And if you haven't yet read, there is an amazing book that came out last year about the power of moments. There can be amazing power, and that moment can only happen if it's authentic. And it's only authentic if there is a relationship. And that takes building time. And influencers have those relationships that we don't have who are coming externally. So why this is important more than ever now is because St. Joseph's Toronto, after I left, has now merged with the first hospital that I worked for, which is St. Michael's, and Providence, when organizations and the mergers and acquisitions are not just limited to healthcare. Even if your organization is a single entity, you have so many departments that are siloed. You can't create change if you don't have people bridging those departments or those entities. And you can only mobilize that corporate agenda and strategy if you work with people that have influence already or are investing in building that influence. So instead of trying to reach the masses, you preserve your energy and work only with that select few. It feels much more manageable and doable. Because we can't, I love this quote, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. So it's getting to people through people. And the reason bubbles are on your tables and have been the theme, and if you've been resisting the urge I see, you can blow the bubbles now. But the idea was a metaphor to remember that water molecules, they attract each other, like droplets. Why? Because it's in their nature. Thank you for getting started. Yes, you may blow them. The tension, they're hydrogen bonds. If you are not water and somebody else is, somebody with influence, why not invite them to actually share and reach out to the water molecules that they already attract? So my goal and my hope for you is that you can create that change without burning out on one or as many simultaneous changes that you are leading right now, by inviting people that have the influence and power, authentic relationships, so that you can preserve your effort and people can actually create and lead meaningful change by themselves. That's all that I have for you. Thank you so much for your listening. Thank you.
All right, everyone, give it up again for Sandeep.
Thank you. Happy to connect. I will be here for the rest of the conference. I'm just going to turn this off.